morning, good afternoon, good evening. We're glad that you tune in to these meditations, and as long as you keep tuning in and listening, we'll keep on offering. So thank you for being a part of this. Just a couple announcements. One is November is Food Pantry Month for the Iowa Falls First United Methodist Church. And right inside our front doors in what we call our garden room is a grocery cart. And we invite you as you go to the grocery stores that you might just find a few extra items that you might be able to share and bring those into the church and drop them there in the grocery cart. And a lot of people in our community would appreciate it, so thank you. Second announcement is Thursday is Veterans Day, and if you have served this country through the armed forces, we thank you for your service and your time. So this week's meditation, we continue to be in this sermon series, the gifts of God, the gifts of love. We're tying this in with our stewardship season, that we're asking you to consider the gifts that God has given you and what might be an appropriate response in your giving back to the church for this coming year. And we hope that you have received something from the Finance Committee and a pledge card, and we invite you to bring your pledge card in. That gives us some assurance, right, that as we work on our budget, that indeed the budget would be fulfilled. So a couple gifts that we have talked about already is the gift of commandment that God gives us. Last week we talked about the gift of giving, right, what it is. Just that opportunity to give of ourselves, and what a gift that is. This week we talk about the gift of the community that God gives us. And we will be in the lectionary, but for this we are moving to the epistle reading as part of the lectionary, and for this week that comes from Hebrews, the letter to the Hebrews. And it's a very interesting letter. It reads like a very long sermon, a sermon to a church who is struggling, a church that is experiencing some despair as they're kind of lost and they've been losing members, and the writer writes this letter, this sermon, to encourage them. One of the things that the writer says is, don't get so caught up inside the work of the church that you forget your own spirituality. Don't get so caught up in just doing those things that we do that you lose sight of who we do it for, right? And do it with, which is make sure you've got Jesus Christ in your life. The writer tells us, don't forget to dream, right? Live into the fullness of faith and love and hope. And you'll get yourself out of this despairing feeling. So in this particular section of the letters, and then we're going to be in the 10th chapter, the writer reminds us that we don't do this on our own. We do what we do in community. That we do it alongside of one another, and we can only really be the church as a church, that is, as a community. And the writer tells us to encourage one another, nurture one another, push one another, right? And that's the gift, right? That we don't rely on ourselves, but we rely on one another. And when we come to the finances of the church, we don't rely on one or two givers. We rely on hundreds of givers. We rely on your gift as part of the community. And now I just lost my train of thought, but when it comes to the community, right? If one is going to grow as a disciple of Christ, one has to be in the midst of other disciples. It's hard, really hard to grow in our faith, to grow in our understanding, to really recognize how God is working in our own personal lives if we're not seeing God work in the lives of others. So the writer of Hebrews says, you got to get together. You've got to fellowship. It's only through that that you're going to grow. It's only through that that you're going to be challenged, right? None of us like to be challenged, but we need to in order to grow. So think about this. How do you feel about this community we call the Iowa Falls First United Methodist Church? What is it that you get out of being here, being a part of this, whether it's in Sunday school, in worship, in small groups, in mission projects? Think about the gifts that you receive just by being part of this community. And what is that worth to you? What does it mean to you? And what does it mean to God in our community? So blessings on your meditation.